Building a digital business is never easy, but doing it in regions with infrastructure challenges adds a whole new layer to the journey. And yet, some of the fastest growing and most innovative businesses are coming from exactly these markets. On our next session, Overcoming Infrastructure Gaps, Scaling Dialing Businesses in Emerging Regions, look at how these challenges are being navigated and how they're turning into real opportunities for growth. So let's welcome back our moderator, Jeremy Stennett, the business advisor and wealth strategic at Weisman Stennett's Business Advisors. And our panelists, we have Dr. Lance McNeil, president of McNeil Advantage, Jean-Pierre Seffer, the founder and CEO of Fact Advisors, Dr. Siegfried Elise, group president and CTO of Helvig Mines and Swiss Shore LLC, and Zihan Sabri, the CEO of Global Market Technologies LLC. Please give them a big round of applause.
Check 1, 2. Good afternoon. How was lunch? I could tell it was wonderful. Oh my gosh. You can't contain. Give me some bottom, please. You can't contain yourselves. Okay. I'm glad for my long intro because then I get to tune up my stuff because the after lunch time frame was definitely never good to speak after lunch. No one comes back. Okay. So I like to get a pulse for the room. Some of y'all were here this morning. Almost all y'all was here this morning. Okay. So I kind of get an idea. What portion of y'all are virtual? Virtual businesses? You're physical. We talked already, so I can know what you virtual. Okay, good. So because we're going to talk about digital infrastructure, right? So I kind of want to get a pulse of what the room is. We're glad that I have two colleagues to join me here. When we talk about digital scaling, conversations are usually talking about speed, servers, or technology talk, right? Innovation and access. When we shift the lens of that, I like to look at this thing in the space of growth, being focused on demand, shifted to platforms, payments, like real things, right, that you guys have to deal with, right? Legal systems, compliance. Like I want to talk about real stuff, not servers and roadmaps and power and connectivity, because there's enough providers for that stuff. Does that make sense? Is that true? Would y'all agree? All right. So to join me in this dialogue are these two gentlemen here, and I'm going to let the gentleman to my farthest left do the introduction. Just introduce yourself, kind of tell who you are, use the mic, please, and then where you're from and your area of expertise.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Super. So yeah, quick introduction from myself. I'm Siegfried Isele. Friends call me Siggy. I'm from Switzerland, so I'm from the Alps, out of the mountains. So I'm doing all the IT business since about 25, 30 years. But I started coding 50 years ago in the age of 6. So I'm a little bit a nerdy guy, but we don't talk about technology today because it's important, because we have to talk about operating model, governance, things like that, which will help us in any situation. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Appreciate you co-signing my thing there. Appreciate that. And next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. McNeil, and I get to, on a daily basis, help start, build, and expand businesses. And the way that I do that is I help them optimize their operations and their financial strategy. And so I'm excited to talk about this thing, technology and infrastructure coming together, and looking at it from a more holistic standpoint view, not just looking at it as a technological tool that we have, but looking at systems more holistically and how we build relationships through technology.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. McNeil. All right. So let's cast the net wide, and I'm going to say that we're going to explore how leading founders and operators navigate infrastructure gaps, leveraging intellectual property. Y'all know, if y'all were here with me earlier, it's my favorite phrase to use as an asset, building businesses that don't just survive, they learn how to thrive. All right. And so between the fulcrum of technology in itself and the day-to-day operations of that and flowing, I think we might be able to get somewhere good and juicy today. Let's start by just asking the question, something wide. How do you scale a business in general, right? When you talk about digital, what does that mean? What does scaling a business mean to you when you talk about digital scaling?
So if you go for scaling, this is important that you really, and I come back to my first saying, the operating model. What is your operating model? Because you can scale everything. It depends on, and it's not relevant to the technology only. Because if there is no internet available, find a different way for your operational model. Find a different way how to leverage it. It's not only that I have no data access, I have no network. Think about what is your operating model, because if your internet is down, is your business down? So I'm a technology guy, 100%, but we have to think about what are the ways that we cover that. And it's not only that we say we need to have this, otherwise we cannot operate, because otherwise our business is dead. And we have seen that during COVID, who was not prepared for different situations was collapsing. So you need to have this operational model. You need to have your governance. And you need to, and this is what probably you are coming over, is with the KPIs on the governance, on all those things, that you clearly can measure it, can leverage against that. I think that's more important. And I know you expect that I'm a technology guy, but I'm not talking about technology, because what is if there's a lack of technology? We need to find a different way.
All right, pass it on to you. What do you think on a broad scale, scaling in general from your perspective?
Yeah, when I look at scaling any business, usually there's what we call key performance indicators, KPIs. And one of the things is we look at where are we currently at. So we assess where we at now, right? And we look at, okay, what's working for us and what's not working. And then scaling to me is taking what's working and allowing us to use that to leverage, and also taking what's not working so that we know what shifts our team can make, so that way the interactions people have through our platforms, through our customer service experience, whether it's a team member, a customer, or a third-party vendor, could have an experience that's rememberable to them.
In an environment like this, I like to make the conversation real and practical, right? It's so easy to say phrases that are customer service experience. So easy to say, well, if you don't have internet, what do you do, right? When you're speaking out theoretical phrases, I like to know, how do you pick a category that you have worked with a client in, and talk to us about a literal gap that you've seen. Define a gap so that way, for those who are here, I know some of the audience from our last chat, not-profit business support services, hair experts. I think there's a couple of hair experts in the room. What kind of gaps? How do you define a gap? And give us an example of what you know it is, so that we can then really lean into what that looks like specifically and how we can address it.
Sure, I'll start with this one. So for myself, working with a lot of nonprofit organizations, one of a gap that we have is when you work with nonprofit organizations, accounting and finance looks a little bit different than for-profit businesses. And a lot of nonprofit organizations gain their income through grants or government contracting. And so when you take on those contracts, there's a lot of terms and conditions in the fine print. Can we agree? Anybody know about that out there? All right. So one of the gaps that we have is sometimes in the financial aspect when we're working with third-party vendors that we are, as an organization, are paying, is making sure that we have the proper data retention in place so that when you have your audit or you have your internal reviews come on, that you're actually meeting all the performance indicators in your contract. And so we use technology to leverage the documentation that's required to have in your database, your system, or your file cabinet, so that when those reviews occur, that you're not scattering around or there's a question of, is that an allowable or disallowable expense? And who hates disallowable expenses? Me. Why? Because where do we get that money to come from? We have to come back and raise it, right? So the goal is we help bridge the gap for those nonprofit organizations by not allowing the people to have to worry from the finance department and have their hair fall out about, okay, what are we going to do? No, we help bridge the gap by making sure that those key performance indicators are within your technological database, real easy for your vendors to work with, so that way the documentation is seamlessly in their system. You can access it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right from your cell phone.
Okay, all right. I like us to be specific and literal. All right. Talk to me.
Let me give you an example from last year's project. So most of the projects we are doing are in regulated markets, insurance, health. You have to respect a lot of things. So we replaced a system for insurance company. I think everybody has to have a health insurance. And what is the most important for the patient? That he's getting an appointment at the doctor and that the invoice is paid, that he's not getting in trouble. So what happens when we build a new system for insurance company? We have to keep in mind, okay, this is the existing old system. The existing old system is carrying all the data. So parallel, we are building a new system. It's not only lift and shift and it's done. So we need to figure out on the way that we said, okay, we don't have everything available, for example. It's not working with AI. If the data is not clean, the AI will be rotten. Everybody knows. We have to have the right foundation for. And based on that, in all those regulated markets, we have to figure out, and this brings us to the point of the discussion today, how can we take care that the things are working? Because at the end, and you said one word in the beginning, customer experience. The client, the customer, you want to get served by your doctor. The doctor wants to get the money. The rest is technology. And we have to figure out a way that the things are running parallel, that we still can be in the old system, build a new system, and at any point in time, seamless migrate the data, which is necessary and relevant. But the most important is that in the front, the client doesn't feel anything about. It's just working. And this is when we talk about emerging markets. What is an emerging market? A lot of people think about, I don't know, South Africa, anyhow, something like that. No, it's a situation we have to conquer. This is an emerging market for me because there's an issue and we have to solve it. But we have to solve it with less pain for all the people which are participating.
Let's lean into that for a second. I appreciate that exit point of redefining emerging markets. Right? How practical and realistic is it? Right? Because you said someone's going all the way over to cross the ocean, 15 hours on a plane to find an emerging market when really it's the next county. I work a lot. I love telling stories, y'all. I work a lot with fashion designers. And one of the things that creative people love to do is to create. And you make money from sales, but they tend to never think about their business journey. They want to create. They want to go find something new to make something sparkly. So they're making a new collection. And so I'm, sitting with this gentleman who's been in the business, 30 plus years, very seasoned, been in stores and so forth, but definitely not reaching his ultimate place of success fiscally. And I said, well, how much have you done in the Southeast? And how much have you done in the Northeast? What's your secondary DMA markets looking like, right? And he's like, what are you talking about, man? I got to get this new collection. The season is coming, Fashion Week is coming up in September. And I go, well, how many sales have you made in a quarter last month? Right? I'm going on your premise of a lot of times when we start talking about these, excuse the offense to the phrase, these cliche concepts that you heard somebody else talk about, you overlook in your businesses the new emerging market. and the new infrastructure that you need to put in place that will yield immediate returns, whether it's a not-profit platform or some for-profit business enterprise. Any chance I can poll the room to find out possible gaps that you think you have that maybe we can be effective at sharing some insights to? Would that be good? Would that be good? Anyone want to share some current gaps you think you have? Saw a hand in the back. No? Anyone? What industries exist here that you run currently? This is a for-profit business?
It is when I work with a lot of nonprofits.
Okay, so let me think. Let me try to say what I heard so y'all can hear. Everyone heard her? Oh, you did. All right, great. So she's working in this space. Any commentary as to her defining her gaps? And one of the challenges she talked about was one of the points that I thought was great was there's a challenge between working in these spaces and connecting the accounting. I think you were talking about that before, right? Any comments?
So when we look at the different, you talked about 3 different components of your business, right? A lot of it, we look at things separate, and sometimes we forget to look at the interconnectedness of it. And so when you look at the interconnectedness of it and you allow the interconnections and the common things that built them together, you can take that to build your infrastructure and your databases to leverage for your customers. Does that make sense?
Is the problem you're having when you share that the 3 spaces, the 3 different industries?
They are all cohesive. This would be a broader discussion. But they are all cohesive together. But when I'm speaking to people that are in tech or when they're in marketing, being able to help translate to them how this is part of the whole picture and how it works together. Because I keep wanting to segment it all separately, but it does all go together. But trying to help get that.
Do you find that in your function, trying to get revenues to grow? Do you think there's a problem there?
Essentially, yes, but I'm more impact driven than revenue driven. Because when you create impacts, revenue does essentially follow, which is why we tell you much along the way.
Okay, so impact is a more of an important data point for you. So impact meaning people serviced, individuals responding to correspondence, communication.
Depends on the sector. When I work with nonprofits, yes, that could be people service, but it's also could be growth of the organization as a whole and their impact. And then on the individual levels that work with entrepreneurs, then it's going to be impacts for growth and development as a person is going to be more effective.
So, thank you. Talk about abilities to measure.
What you're doing, because you're saying there are 3 different areas, and they belong together anyhow, correct? So what we are facing, or what I was facing in the past really often, is that the people which are deciding on the board or wherever, they want to do it in the same way like before. That's the one thing. You cannot change the things if you do it the same way. That's the one. The other thing is that when you want to get a different result, you must think about that you also take some unpopular decisions once in a while. Because the problem is, and this we are facing, we have a saying for that in Switzerland. We have the saying, there are people in the management often, they want to get a shower without getting wet.
No, I'm very good at unpopular decisions.
But you know what I mean? And this is the problem often when you don't have the big picture, when you don't see, when you do something here, what is the effect there? You have to respect that. You have to see this interconnection, like you said, because this is relevant for the whole ecosystem you're working in. And then you need to do it step by step, better small steps, but go into the right direction. And what I like in software development, we talk about agile development. That means we do step by step, but in a decent time, in 2 or 3 weeks, we have a ready product which is running. So we must define what is the running thing that we see results, and then we can see also step by step a growth. But we have to have the big picture in mind. And this is what when we are coming back from the technology, when I'm talking here from stories, we have to tell a story. What is the big story? And how can we define this in small steps, in small stories, so that we can fulfill this step by step? And also, and this is one important thing, because you will not do it alone. It will be always a team. Give trust to your people. They will know what they do because they are good in the thing they do in every day. But often management is not giving the trust to the people because they sit in their ivory tower and have their big picture. Really often I face that. But trust into the people that they know what they are doing, and give them that trust. They will give it 10 times back.
Thank you. You have something to add?
Yeah, I wanted to just add a little bit addition to what I said in response to your question, because as I sat with your question a little bit longer, something else came up for me. And I kind of began to understand your question a lot more in a deeper context. And when I know it for myself, when I'm working with the different divisions, one of the things that I get to do as a leader is look at how those divisions start the intake process all the way to delivery. And I look at what forms and how they communicate what they need to produce. And I try to make sure that my documentation and what I'm looking to create in terms of the larger picture can meet the way that they understand it within their department.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, but let me add one sentence, sorry. If you do it in the same way like you did it in the past, it will not get better. This is what I meant with the previous saying.
All right, thank you. One of the things that I would like to maybe shift to is risk and compliance, right? In this space, a lot of times, and I like to be transparent, even I tend to skip over it because it's not always a sexy, monetized, inspired category, right? I think most business owners tend to not want to focus on those pieces. So how do we use whether it's online technology to help us with speeding up our compliance, whether it's in legal, state, or IRS? What strategies have you all seen or used to help companies to stay compliant and using technology to do it?
When it comes to using technology to help companies.
There's a third person, it seems. So, we are in Vegas, correct? What are the most people doing in Vegas? Gambling, right? When we run projects, when we run businesses, we can't gamble. We have to deal with the risk. We have to be clear, what is our risk? And for example, if there is a governance thing we have to fulfill or whatever, what is the documentation? What is the calculated risk? Because if you look to all those rules and regulations, there's nothing written, you have to do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's always a frame which is giving you flexibility, but you must be proper documented and you must be really clear on that. When we do audit on systems, for example, or audit on processes, we often see that it's not clearly documented what is the expectation, what is the necessary. Because when you get into an audit, an external auditor is coming over and checking your things. He is absolutely happy if you can communicate, hey, this is a calculated risk. We go into that and we clearly know if this is not working, that costs us X, Z number of money. But it's clear. It's a calculated risk, and governance and compliance for me is working on calculated risk.
Doc, you got anything?
Yeah, so we talk about compliance. Well, and we look at these different government agencies. We have to know what we need to be compliant with first.
if you want to use like a state compliance as pertains to maybe a nonprofit organization and their regular reporting or filing, how can you use technology to maybe speed up or make it easier?
Yeah, give me a moment. I'm going to get there. So you have to first understand what you need to become compliant with, right? If you are dealing with a government, you have the federal, you have the state, you have county, city. So you have to go to those different entities depending on the type of business you have and figure out what are you as a business required to be compliant with, whether that's getting a business license or whether that is providing certain supporting documentation. Like, for instance, everyone has a compliance with the federal government, right, with the Internal Revenue Service, and we have mandated reporting with that. So you have to first understand what is it that I'm required to have for the IRS. Once you understand the information that you're required to obtain, then you can use technology to obtain that information. Like, for instance, if you're a tax preparer and you're preparing taxes, one of the things you need to do is verify the taxpayer's identity. How do we do that? We need to capture an ID. So when people register onto my platform and they put their name, their email, phone number, what is one of the items I'm going to add to my intake form? I'm going to add for you to upload a picture of your ID, so that way that portion of my compliance that I'm required to have is in my system and database, so that way I can make sure that I'm compliant. Because if you don't know what you're getting in compliant with, then what do you know what to collect? So you have to make sure you start with making sure you know what are your business requirements. And you can do that with getting with an attorney. You can go to the Small Business Administration. There's so many different tools and resources you can get with a consultant, so that way you can make sure that your business is meeting those compliances. Like, for instance, anyone operating online may need a privacy policy. You may need terms of use. You may have GDPR compliance requirements. You might need to have an abuse policy or anti-spam policies because you're operating online. So those are some of the things that you may want to look at when you establish your business and you're continuing to grow in other sectors.
Oh, thank you. I want to add to some of those categories that was being discussed. A lot of times websites don't carry, or individuals do not use you mentioned policies, anti-spam policy, this and the other. And I think that piece is very valid. I'm going to pull that out for a little bit and lean into it a little bit for you all, because I think no matter what industry you are, you all have websites. And a key piece is recognizing what is the right language to be used for the industry you're in, and what are the rules that apply to that language specifically. And there's ways to do that. So one, I actually agree that you could just lean over to your SBA offices, because they've actually collected a lot of this information and literally it's already there for you. So there's a lot of those places that you can go for privacy policies, usage policies. How many ever, anyone ever read the entire, what's it called?
Terms of use.
Thank you. Terms and conditions. You know, you fill out that thing at the bank or at the website you're signing up on. Show me your hands. Oh, she's like, I read it all 200 pages of the fine print, right? So, here's another one. The bank. How many of you have received in the last maybe, I think 60 days, one of your banks have sent you an update? Just recently, I know that everybody in here who has a business had to have received it. If you work with one of those big banks, Bank of America, Chase, any one of those big flagship banks, no? Go check your emails. So they're regularly updating their terms and conditions. And here's the question to you as business owners, founders, right? When was the last time you updated your terms and conditions? And why should you? Why should you? And the idea of this digital skilling, right? Any commentary about the whys and what pros and cons to not doing it?
So we can agree that the world is constantly changing and adapting to our environment. And so rules, regulations, and laws change. And so it's important that we stay up to date with that, because your terms of use must comply with those regulations. If not, you need to have a disclosure in there that basically says that if there's any portion in this contract that's not valid, that the rest of the terms are still enforceable. And this is why you want to keep up to date with your terms of use and your different policies, because there are sometimes, if you don't have that small clause in there, it may void out your whole entire contract, and your business may not have been entitled to the compensation that you received. Like, for instance, if your business is not in good standing with the Secretary of State, then those contracts may be legally considered null and void. Now, your customers may or may not know that, but if your customers do and they decide, hey, you know what, I could technically get that service for free because they weren't in compliance, because they knew that information, then they could really use that against you and your business. And now the liability and the calculated risk my friend talked about earlier has now shifted and changed, because that was a risk you did not calculate into your formula. And so it's something to be very mindful of, is get involved in your local community that has business registration programs, so that way when an update occurs, you all are getting those updates to your email, and you know, okay, am I gonna be automatically in compliance with this, or is there something that I need to change? And if you're in compliance, great, no changes need to be made. But if not, then that's when it's time to say, okay, we're gonna go to the drawing board and we're gonna update a couple of things in the back office.
How do we use software to maybe do some of those updates?
This is a good point, but that's why what we really often face also is that companies want to have their own terms, conditions, whatever. Why not go to a standard? Because it's much easier to maintain a standard. So if there's not really a big benefit for you to go for individual terms, which you have to maintain much more intense, why not to go to a standard? Like you said, there is a change, you get notified, plug it in, or use any service or whatever which is giving you that service already, so that you always comply. This is a calculated risk, because we often see this, especially at insurance companies, because no insurance company is a social organization, we all know. They want to earn money, they want to make money. And they try sometimes to squeeze a little bit with those terms, but they have tons of lawyers in their office. But if we talk about SME companies, better to stick with standards. It's the same like when you said we have to know our clients, we have to have the data. In technical parts, we talk about KYC, the KYC process, know your client. Automate that, standardize that. Whatever is standardized is much easier to maintain, and at the end, it's reducing your costs. And what we have a saying, you know, Switzerland is having a lot of banks, financial institutions, but we have one saying: the money you don't need to spend, you don't need to earn. So reduce the level of cost, then also with a less revenue, you make a better margin.
I like to tell my clients, every time I save them some money, they earn. I earned it, and so I've earned it, and then we make some money from those earnings, right? Bringing it, because I want to make sure I'm leaning over to my folks asking about how we're doing on time check. How are we doing? Thank you. I would like to shift and ask if there are questions. This topic is not always very exciting, and it's not always a topic that yields all kinds of fun stuff. But surely, I would like to lean into the doomsday consequences if there are no other questions, and kind of do some wrap up points. Any questions about strategies that you can use, or that you would like to get assistance or support with in your business category, when considering making changes or improvements or adjustments to your current platforms, service offerings, including websites, sales correspondence with your clients? I want to talk about, I call it the doomsday. What are some of the consequences of not using the technological tools to update your compliance, for example, or we've talked about compliance, we've talked about infrastructure. What are some of the consequences that I think when people overlook these kind of changes?
So in total, it must be, you must rely on your system. You must rely on your process. Only when you can rely on that, your company can survive. So that's why the most important from all of that operating model governance is reliability. So only if this is given, you have a business which will still run in the future. Otherwise, it's like open the window and throw your money out, because it will cost a lot of money. And every breach of that will cost a lot. So we are not Google or Meta or whatever, which gets sued in front of court and then they bombard with 10 lawyers left and 100 lawyers right. We are not. But the thing is, again, if we don't need to spend that money for wasting that, we can continue on our profit and on our good continuation. But the main thing is we have to have a reliable system. And it doesn't matter if it's old, a new, or a process. We need to know what the things are doing, and we need to calculate if it's not 100%. Nothing is 100% safe. But if we know we can deal with, for me, it's a reliable system. And this is the foundation for.
So a lot of lost revenues potentially, all right? Okay, sir.
When it comes to infrastructure of a house, if the foundation of that house is not solid, it's going to collapse. So the infrastructure of your programs that you use, the technology, you want to make sure that that infrastructure is built on a solid ground, so that way your team and you can stand on it. Because without that infrastructure, like for example, I remember there was a point in our business where we had grown so much. We had a portion where we used technology for automated processing, and then we had a portion of our business where we had to do some manual review. And we grown so fast, we didn't automate the manual review process as quickly as we should have. And so what happens is when that growth occurred, we had to expand our team to be able to take on the bandwidth from those customers, right? If not, our business, we would have lost those relationships. Relationships can be just as important as the money, because without the relationship, the money doesn't come. So you have to trust me as a provider to do the service that I requested of you, so that way we can be having a fruitful and trustful relationship to build both of our businesses. Because each of us needs all of us, and all of us needs each of us. And when we look at it from that and we lock arms and we say, hey, we're going to stand united, and we're going to make sure that we build a system where the processes are put in place so that no matter how many more customers I attempt to take on, we don't get into a portion where our business collapsed and now we failed. Now people don't want to work with us. Now we don't have the connections to get the next contract or the next job. So now what's going to happen? Your team is now looking at job security issues. You're looking at payments start going in default. So you want to make sure that the infrastructure you put in place can withhold and stand on the volume that your business is bringing in.
Thank you. I want to give you a couple of literal examples as we wrap this up. Earlier, it was mentioned about being in compliance with the Secretary of State of the county, the state that you're in. You may or may not know, and I really appreciated you making that point. You may or may not know that, I'm going to piggyback on that, you can literally lose business by not being in compliance in the Secretary of State, which means you do need to make sure that every registration period that is announced. Now, depending on what state you're in, it's at different times of the year. It could either be your registration date, or the state requires you a beginning date of their own setting. So I think there's a lot of folks from California, for example. I know that if you do not pay it by a certain date, state of California literally rescinds your entity, and it's really expensive to create entities. Your franchise fee in California is significantly high. It's one of the highest in the country. When it comes to your going through my little list. Intellectual property, I've been discussing that all week. Like I've been here a week, all day today. Registration of your intellectual property is paramount. Some of the challenges that can come from that, or the consequences of not registering, is another company registering. The United States operates on a first to register platform, not first use, meaning I've been using it forever, and so I own it no matter what anyone says. When it comes to tax compliance, a lot of states that are, especially states that like Florida, that have county and city requirements, a lot of times you also can be deregistered as a result of it and have fiscal penalties associated with re-registering. So what's the point of losing money when you just don't maintain your compliance registration? So I think we've touched on a few of those points. I think I'm going to wrap it, ask the two gentlemen to give us any kind of culminating statements.
Yeah, so for me, the most important is trust your own system, trust your own processes. Because if you don't trust into your own processes, they're already rotten. If your processes are working for you, for sure there could be an improvement. Everything can get made better always, for sure. But first of all, trust into that. Don't run after every idea you have heard anywhere. Trust into your own. Take technology which is working for you. It must not be the most fancy. It must serve the things you need. And then grow step by step. And leverage, as you said. Think about how you can leverage your system when your business is growing, that your system can go with, because otherwise you're not only losing money. Money is a thing you have or not, don't care. But the thing is, if you lose, and you said, if you lose relationships, if you lose clients, your business is going down. And one bad word is 6 times harder than one good word. That's why trust in yourself, trust in your business, trust in your processes, and be open for taking advice. But always look into yourself and think, is this the way I want to go? Because if you believe in that, it's the way which is working for you.
Well, there you have it, sir.
Awesome. I would just say in closing, be open to always being a learner. Because when you open the space to learn, even the things we think we know, we may find out that there are some things that we didn't know that affects that process. And when we learn what those things are, we can continue to grow ourselves, we can grow with our customers, we can grow our business, and we can grow our technological softwares that we use to build our business.
Thank you. What I'm hearing is that, hang on a sec.
No, there's not one question. Hello? Perfect, thank you. It's not a question, it's just a sidestep. As a CMO, I mean, we talked about this, you mentioned that exactly, and I would just point out and underline what he said, what Siegfried said. First of all, get your things done, get your foundation, and then you can scale up. But before that, focus on what you have and what you want to achieve, who you stand for, and what is your positioning. First of all, general questions to ask and general questions to answer. So that's just my CMO voice. Thank you.
Points from our friendly CMO, y'all. Infrastructure gaps aren't necessarily barriers to grow, but they're opportunities for you to grow. Right? It opens up room for you to have conversations. I always lean with find an expert. Right? You're working, you're doing the thing you think you're doing, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And as you're either achieving current goals, if you're find yourself doing the same thing over and over, he shared earlier, that means you're probably not doing something new to bring you some new challenge so that you can either bring in more revenue or solve current problems. So I always lean to find experts for every space in your business that you have so that you can continue to grow or that they can open up new challenges for you to overcome, which in turn naturally would help you to grow. Tough topic. But I thank you all for your attention and wish you a great rest of your conference day. Thank you.